it felt like almost a break from the rat race, what I call. I took a trip to Costa
Mhm.
Rica, and it was crazy. When I got there, there's so much less marketing. There's so, like, as far as whether it's like billboards or radio or TV, a lot of that stuff just gets cut out, and there's natural conversations happening. There's curious conversations happening, just enjoying time.
Welcome to the Landscape Cafe, brought to you with support from Fort Myers Garden Service, maintaining and protecting business and residential landscapes. Visit fortmyersgardenservice.com or call 239-990-7494.
And it's so much more quiet over there as far as like things coming at you in every direction. You're not on your phone as much because you're more on an adventure, so you're not looking at all the ads that come every time you're on Facebook or searching something new online. And for me, when I went over there, it felt like a break from the rat race. That's the word that I came up with, or didn't come up with it, but I heard and I resonated with, and just cut out a lot of the noise, the day-to-day stuff. And I think when COVID hit, it was almost a similar realization for people as well. So when they were at home working, and they didn't have somebody over them watching them, make sure they were doing everything good, and they didn't have to make the commute to the office and listen to all the radio ads. I think there's a lot that people, workers, open their eyes to when COVID hit, and realizing, man, now that I don't have to do my commute, now that I don't have to spend my hour sitting at my desk, rocking in my chair, eating bonbons during lunch, I can fill those voids of time, or the senseless back and forth with your coworkers. Even though you got all your work done, you still have to wait for an hour before the clock hits 5 for you to check out. There's so many voids of time that I think people realized that were available if they could work diligently and get their stuff done and still, do everything their employer needed them to do and more. But there's so much more voids of time, and people looked to fill those voids, whether it was going for a walk, eating maybe a quick healthy lunch, and then going for a walk, or going for your bike ride in the morning, or sleeping in just a little bit more, playing with your kids around the house or outside. I think it changed a lot for many consumers, many people that were working. It's a very interesting change, and I think more people took notice of the weeds and not necessarily plants that were springing up and growing throughout their yard. And it was interesting to see that interest, because it was like, wow, when they stop and kind of hit the pause button, they can realize and appreciate a little bit more of their yard. And it was really cool because I'm super passionate about landscaping. And so when the clients would say, oh my gosh, this is like the best thing ever, and start to tear up after we finished doing a gorgeous new yard for them, they appreciated the job so much more. Like, if we did that job for that customer maybe at a different time, when they're just grabbing their coffee, run out of the car, hit a reverse, get out of the driveway and go to work every morning, they don't get to appreciate it nearly as much, and they don't maybe understand the weight of all that we did. And so on my end, it created a lot more grateful customers and a lot more in tune customers. And I found that projects would last longer. They would be a lot, the first few months is really critical of after a landscape is installed. And, people will hire us to do the monthly checkups on their landscaping. But as far as like week to week goes, you still have to pay a little bit of attention after it's first installed. And customers were paying way more attention. And if there was any little browning on a leaf, I always made sure, hey, if you see something, text it over to me. I can let you know, hey, does the water need to be turned down or turned up? Do we need to go over there and spray it with a little pesticide or whatever. But landscapes were having almost virtually no issues because they were being paid attention to, and anything that came up, they were catching it. Versus normally customers weren't really looking into their landscaping, didn't really care. Maybe they did, but they just didn't make it a priority, didn't have time to, and didn't enjoy doing it rather than it being a chore. But that's some of the things that I saw for the landscape industry. You have any insiders or any pointers or add-ons you want to add on to that little bit there, Sid?
Oh, we could talk all day on this and have a lot of fun doing it, I think. But I agree with you that excitement was at an all-time high level. The reason why they were doing it was, really clear to them then. It wasn't like it used to be just to keep up with the Jones and, match the neighborhood expectations or do whatever the HOA required. It went way beyond that. Probably the only thing there that you may not have covered was the interest in growing your own food, and fruit trees and vegetables went off the charts as well, especially at the very beginning in 2020 when food supply was put into question, when people saw empty grocery store shelves over and over again on the news when they did watch it, as well as in the grocery store. That created a little bit of fear, not so much in fear immediately that it's happened, that it's a panic right now, but a fear of what might come. And then, of course, the toilet paper shortage. That was the fear of right now, but it gave everybody kind of a little bit of a feeling of, oh, what if I don't find any when I go to the store? What am I going to do then? So I
can put in plans for them that they can use.
Yeah, we don't have the yellow pages anymore the way we used to, or the Sears catalogs or anything. So
right,
it was going to be a whole new experience. Who gets a newspaper?
Yeah.
So, let alone who wants to use one. Yeah. So there were some. When we look back on it, it's easy to laugh a little bit about it, chuckle about it, but it wasn't funny at the time. At the time it was. There was a lot of anxiety to be resolved too. So some of those walks around the yard were just getting up and moving around and trying to shed some anxiety, and it was a subconscious effect, I think, for people to do that, but clearly they did. And probably what we were able to help them do was save their life psychologically, because it was so stressful and tenuous on people, especially who didn't feel like a lot of control of their surroundings and their life. And I'll contrast that to like yourself being a business owner, or myself too. We have a substantial amount of control of what we do, on a day-to-day basis throughout the day, throughout the week. But if you are, working in a office environment where you have to go there and be told what to do, even when you know what to do, that is a different kind of thing. So I think we benefited in ways that are just so deep at different levels that it takes, not only a while to understand them, but a while to convey what they are. So we could talk a long time about this, and probably should, but life does go on, and eventually you gotta help people with getting their landscape taken care of, and that's, I know what you're all about. So let's just have fun giving people what they want now. It's so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And going back to touching on a point you just mentioned about growing your own food, and that's something I've actually been quite interested in myself as a consumer. Eric from our Fort Myers Garden Service team, he's our manager there, is very passionate about permaculture, growing your own food and possibly even, livestock as well, and having those cycles that work together, like the chickens. After they eat, they do droppings, they till up the soil over time. They make a really rich compost. You can move the chickens to a different part of the yard, and they have extremely fertile soil to grow crops in, grow vegetables, and other things you can eat. But those working cycles basically is what permaculture is, and it's a very interesting lifestyle. And you can do it on a massive scale. You can do it on a farm scale, and you can do, commercially organic, home raised farms with chickens, other livestock, or just veggies and stuff like that as well. Or you can do it on a very, very, very tiny scale, like a small residential lot, as long as your HOA and your neighbors won't go crazy at you. And you don't even have to, it could just be something, your front yard could be beautiful to please everybody else. And then you could do a small scale permaculture yard in the backyard too. Long story short, it's something that I've found myself very interested in. And especially with the eggs situation. So I don't know who's changing food, but apparently a lot of the chicken feed is being somehow manipulated or changed. And there's been months and months where eggs have not been produced, and now farmers are catching on and they're switching to sweet goat feed, different types of feed, and as soon as they change to a different type of feed, the chickens are producing eggs again. So there's another one of those kind of anxiety, fear things that kind of comes into play and can really make you nervous. But I think our culture has gone from a lot of that farmers, very simple lifestyle. We have sped up, and now I call it our Amazon world, where you think it, go on your phone, you click it, and there's a new microwave sitting at your front door 2 days later. Or the gas station, convenience store theory. You want it, you put your blinker on at the next intersection, you pull in, and you grab your big goal. I think a lot of our society right now is, at least my generation that I'm seeing, and I mean, I guess all across the board, but I guess you could say a lot of my friends, they're starting to look back at how were things done prior, and with less, like, whether it's governmental control or less control of their life specifically. A lot of people are wanting to kind of revert back to that, what I'm finding. And that's something also I'm very interested in as well, as now I'm a father and I have a little baby and plan to have more. The intentional time that you can have in your yard, in your landscaping, whether we do a nice, beautiful ornamental landscape for you, or we help you with the permaculture system and doing some organics, helping you with all of that stuff, food that you can eat. Either way, time in the garden, time outdoors with your family is some of the most valuable time you're going to get. When you're sitting on the couch for a couple hours just watching shows, that's good for some rest, and that's necessary. But I think a lot of in our convenience culture, people binge watch and they'll just sit all day, multiple, like in the evenings, every time they're home, just sit in front of the TV, just watch. But being able to spend that intentional time out in the yard with your family is really cool. But I said all that to say that, going back to that control piece and saving people's lives psychologically, it sounds a little bit like a stretch, but it's really not. Being able to put control back in consumers' lives and people's lives, I think definitely decreases the anxiety level, and it creates a lot more time for intentionality with your family. Pretty interesting perspective, isn't that, Sid?
It certainly is. You bring up a great point of, convenience is super important, and people live by convenience now. And if nothing's more convenient than having local food, local as in grown right in your backyard or in your kitchen windowsill.
Mm-hmm.
As in, you can grow some herbs right there and enjoy them within minutes. So convenience, though, is a huge thing. Our society with kids has become a lot about the ball fields, football, basketball, soccer, all of these fields. So you go to those parks, and you're engaged in a game, whether you're watching it as a spectator, as the parents are, or you're playing it as a kid. But it's all kind of a contrived thing on a time and a place and the space to do it. But if you have your own sort of park-like effect in your backyard, then you don't have to get in the car and round everybody up and get over to the park to do that. You've got it right there, and you don't have to wait for a game to start. But here you've got 3 kids, one's playing the game. What are the other 2 doing? Those dynamics too. So we've kind of grown comfortably numb as a society to those things. Just yesterday, I stopped by with 2 dogs, and one of them is a border collie puppy, and she's very active. So we went to a dog park, and so she could play and socialize with other dogs. The interesting thing is there was a really nice playground adjacent to the dog park. So, it was 100 yards away or something like that. And it was convenient because parents could take the kids to the playground, put the dog over in the dog park, kind of work between them. I noticed that at one point when we got there, but there were only like 3 kids playing when we arrived, and then an hour and a half later when we left, it had gone to no kids. The last hour of that, nobody was on the playground. That's a pretty sad situation. There's a huge big neighborhood right next door, walking distance for a lot of people, but nobody there on a Sunday afternoon. Just it's kind of sad. Yeah.
Right.
I'd like to imagine that they were at their own home, playing in their own yard with the neighbor kids. However, probably more often than not, they're indoors in front of screens indoors. So those kids that have a place to play in their own yard are truly blessed, and that'll show up later.
The Landscape Cafe is a production of Pure Landscaping and the Niche Podcast Network. Learn more about Bailey, Katie, and the team by visiting purelandscaping.com. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. And don't forget, the best place to rate or follow the show is at thelandscapecafe.com. Thank you for listening in. Stay tuned for the next part in this conversation.